dealing with this pandemic. Police officials, healthcare personnel, the delivery boys who ensure our daily requirements are delivered at doorsteps, the government authorities who keep us abreast of the latest update and situation, and many behind the scene workers, be it power, water, or communication, ensuring we remain at home safe. Otherwise, it would have been an extreme situation with total chaos all around. So a big thank you to all of them. Without taking much of your time, I would like to introduce you to Harish, who is the country head, facilities and administration for ABB India, and Vishwanath Sitaraman, head of FM MAC and founder member of Oraka. Both are having a diverse background combined with years of experience and will take you through the approach we need to adopt to make our facilities and work areas safe and ready, considering the spread of pandemic and controls required to limit it and safeguard our work areas. Over to you, Harish now.
Harish, you're on a mute. Please unmute.
Thank you, Anil. Welcome, Vishwa, and a warm welcome to all the participants of the webinar. Would like to rewind a bit before we enter into the topic for the day. We had a wonderful topic in terms of preparedness of the facility or preparing the facility to new normal. This is what we have been seeing during the last week webinar. And today we would be looking at what would be the new normal in terms of our facility operations. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, Harish.
Hello.
Harish, we can hear you.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, Harish, carry on, please.
Harish, carry on.
I'm not able to hear anything. I'm sorry.
Continue.
Hello.
Continue. Go on.
Hello.
You can hear. Go on, Harish. We can hear you. Continue.
Vishwa, take over.
Vishwa,
Okay.
can you just take it over?
Yeah, sure. So, a list of recommendations that we have opted for continuing to ensure safety and security not only of individuals, our properties, as well as the public. We have divided it into 5 major topics as to why, how do we ensure a safe place, how do we ensure a secure place for employees, and how do we ensure visibility of cleaning and hygiene, etc. And what are the list of recommendations that we would provide to ensure that we limit the COVID-19 situation to the maximum possible in terms of the WHO standards as well as the law of the land's instructions. Thirdly, when do we need to inform employees as to how they can come, how they need to work into.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before employees return to work, and also, what is it that they need to follow when they come into the office space? The penultimate one, how as to proactively facilitate a discussion with the business lines, as well as how do we take them on board, etc., etc. Lastly, as to who all are responsible for making this whole facility preparedness as a whole to ensure that we take care of this COVID situation. Moving on, we all know what is the source, what is the means, and how do we protect. But then the source definitely is close contact, which we need to kind of make sure that we are not, we are not very close to each other, whether we are in travel, whether we are at office, whether we are at the cafeteria, etc., etc. The second option of the source would be the respiration, where, if at all you are in a vehicle traveling, we are inside the office, we kind of, any coughing, sneezing, etc., the droplets are, it can actually fall down. Personal protection equipment, social distancing, self-health monitoring, disinfection of the commonly touched surfaces, cleaning our hands and sanitizing it every now and then etiquette, class etiquette by using of masks, and again, social distancing, other facility precautions that we intend to. So coming to the social distancing, bit, if Harish is online, I would request him to take over. Harish, are you online?
Yes, yes. Thanks. Sorry, there was a challenge in terms of my system. My apology to the entire team here. So Vishwa would have covered up to the social distancing and the personal hygiene aspect of it. The key important elements in order to protect our facility from COVID-19 is we have to follow the social distancing aspect of it, personal hygiene, respiratory hygiene, as well as the cleaning and sanitation of our facility, which becomes an important aspect in terms of maintaining our facility and keeping a bay at the COVID across our facilities. These 4 parameters plays an important role in terms of safeguarding our facilities. When we are talking about the aspects which plays an important role in safeguarding the facilities, it's also important not only the team, the facilities team or our own facilities team who work towards it, it's equally important we engage our partners. Most of us live in multi-tenanted buildings. Most of us live in tech parks. It's equally important you engage with the building teams and the tech park teams, who is going to be one of the key stakeholders in the fight against COVID or protecting COVID in your organization. The second important stakeholder in the entire ecosystem is going to be a service provider who is going to be there within working with you, or your service partner who is working with you day in and day out in your facility. Last but not least is the business leader who is going to ensure that, or who is going to occupy the space and ensure whatever support is required by the facilities team. The business leaders are the one who is going to support us. A collaborative approach in terms of the new normal way is going to be the way forward. We do agree there are a lot of parameters which are there as a facility team we can take care of. There are 5 important aspects which has been recommended and we have considered for today's topic. Those 5 topics would be planning. You plan your facility properly before you are reopening or back to your new normal. Employee commute, entry control, soft services, and E&M services. We would be touching upon these services in order to ensure we are back to resuming office in the new normal way. In terms of resuming operation, the first and foremost thing is the facility planning aspect of it. What all is required in terms of a facility planning is what, as an FM, you have to jot down and ensure you have a clear detailing done. Before even opening the facility, this is a recommended chart for planning resuming operations in your facility, where we talk about day -2, day -1, and day 0. Day -2 and day -1 is going to be the core facilities team and the support staff of the facilities and the management team. Day 0 is where we are going to onboard the employees. Once we are prepared with the facility readiness, that is when the employees have to be onboarded. It is equally important that we communicate constantly to our employees in terms of what is the happening, what are the preparedness, what are the process to be adhered in the new normal way. The second aspect of it is the resource planning. How do you get your resources? Day 1, when you are going to come back in the new normal way of operations of facilities, it is going to be not as usual as we had earlier when we come back from a vacation or when we come back from a festival holiday. This is definitely an aspect which is going to be totally different, since we are not out of the pandemic still, and this can continue for next 8 to 10 months. So a structured way or a staggered approach is what is recommended. Even in the staggered approach, there are certain recommendations from our side when you are onboarding employee on day one of your resuming office. Certain important apps like Arogya Setu, then you have a self-declaration being brought in, also thermal scanning being introduced, mandatory hand wash and sanitization, and restriction of visitors. This may not be the process which we have been adopting all this while, but this will be a process which will become the new normal way going forward. Let us remember that training plays a very important and a dominant role in terms of running these processes and ensuring these processes are in place. I would request Vishwanath to comment on the employee commute aspect of it, which is a very, very key aspect in terms of facility operations.
Thank you, Harish. And once again, thanks for giving the chance to share our opinion to the entire fraternity on the call. To start with, I would recommend to meet the owner and the site in charges of the transport operations. Explain to them what do they mean by a 50% occupancy, what are the equipment additional that we need for a driver in terms of the mask, the sanitization of the vehicle, sanitary kit, etc. And also to guide them, saying that after every trip, there will be a sanitization done on the vehicle by a dedicated housekeeping team, and to follow the security instructions very strictly and not to have any debates with them. And in case they have any queries, any issues, to immediately raise it to the transport head or to the facility head. The other point I would like to highlight is to have a fixed roster for all the team, the employees, the transport supervisors, the backend team, etc., to make sure that the transition of the pickup, the drops, the boarding, deboarding becomes very smooth, at least for the next 60 days. So I would strongly recommend to have a roster for at least about 30 days, depending on the company's policies. Last but not the least, in case of any queries, we would like to have on regarding the transport, there should be a helpline, a centralized helpline COVID email ID where people can share their feedback. Plus, not only that, in terms of seating in the vehicle also, I would recommend the staggered seating, plus making sure that every alternate row is occupied by the employee to make sure they are safe. I'm sure GSTS also has a session in the coming days exclusively on transport, and more topics and an elaborate discussion on the transport requirements will happen. Hence, I'm concising and I'm summarizing the major requirements that I have got with regards to transport. Last but not the least, like how we treat our employees, we need to treat our drivers also with respect to giving them food, coffee, tea, beverages, and make them our own employees, treat them like our own employees, which almost all the companies do. Thanks, Harish. Back to you.
Thank you, Vishwa. Coming to the security and the perimeter protocol, all of us know that we have most of the organizations, all the organizations will have a robust security process in place. What is going to be different compared to the existing security process, and what is that all going to be new normal in terms of the security practices? All this while, what happens is that the security just checks an identity card based on the protocol of the different organization. And then if there is an appointment which is there, they check for it, call the respective person, make an entry into the register, and then they just allow them inside. This is what a simple protocol we ensure in terms of most of the organizations. Today, it's going to be little different in terms of how we are going to approach our employees, support staff, vendors, as well as visitors. There are also policies which are being driven by various authorities in terms of how we are supposed to maintain a protocol in terms of our offices. One of the interesting facts which I learned is that there is going to be a thermal screening which will be done, that all of us know. The most interesting aspect is that while you are doing a thermal screening, if there is going to be an abnormal temperature in one of the employees, the details of the employees have to be recorded and it has to be submitted to the authorities on a daily basis. This is going to be released as a process going forward in order to combat COVID across the nation. This is a process. As a process, this is going to be released. The second important aspect is that most of us would be forced to implement sanitizing places, as well as hand wash facility, sanitizing facility across our locations at the entry point. Mask will become a mandatory for even entering inside our office places. In order to ensure that the new normal way is implemented, the new normal way is practiced, you would require a lot of training to be incorporated to the security team. That is where we were talking about the engagement with our service provider in the previous slides. Also, when it comes to a lot of visitor management, today we have a visitor, we just allow them by taking the basic details. How it is the new normal way it is going to be is that a visitor will be screened how an employee is going to be screened, post which the visitor would be asked to meet the medical doctor, and then upon certification of the medical doctor is what he would be allowed inside. We advise as per protocol in order to ensure that protocols of the visitors are maintained. We advise the host to be there at the entry point, receiving the visitors and escorting the visitors throughout the process, so that the visitor do not get offended as per the protocols of the organization. The second aspect which we would also like to bring in terms of visitor management is that all this while we were taking visitors to different shop floors, we were taking them to the different meeting rooms across the floors. We would advise for some time if you can restrict them to your meeting room, which is there in an reception or closer to your entry point, where the concentration of the employee is going to be very, very less. It is a better way of handling a visitor. It is also recommended that post departure of the visitor, the particular meeting room can be sanitized fully, including the chairs, tables, as well as the touch points of the room, the door handles, and all these points. Vishwa, I would like to pitch in. I would like you to pitch in and share your views in terms of the security guidelines.
Absolutely. You know, two major points that I would like to highlight in terms of visitors are, instead of having the normal register and pen and paper entries, you know, as much as possible, see if we can have a digitize the entry of them, digitize in terms of VMS system to be in place, if it is possible in the next coming week. Second point is assign a dedicated meeting room for visitors, at least wherever possible, so that the housekeeping team and the security team knows where a visitor has to be seated, and they take care of the sanitization and they ensure that the visitor does not leave that place. Plus, also have a pre-booking system for visitors across the management wherever possible. I know we all have different multiple processes. We have thousands of employees, thousands of meetings happening with visitors. As much as possible, please use a online technology tool to kind of have a discussions with visitors. Avoid as much as visitors as possible. These are some points I would like to share. Harish, back to you.
Thank you. And moving to the material gate process or a material management process, all these days we would directly just accept the vehicles or the trucks in the factories. What happens, the process is that we just allow the truck complete an MES process, material entry process, take the papers and then stamp it and then send them inside. Going forward, the aspect in terms of personal hygiene, social distancing, respiratory hygiene, all this has to be really adopted across every aspect of the facility. One of the critical areas of facility is going to be our material gate. In the material gate, we would have to revisit the way we are adopting the processes. We might need to install a hand wash facility or a hand sanitizing facility for the drivers and the associates to get themselves sanitized before they enter the material entry system point or the place where you have an entry of the material being made. Then once the documents are completed, there is a process certain organizations adopt in terms of sanitizing the vehicle by itself before the vehicle is allowed inside the facility. Post sanitization, it is taken to a different area where it is a demarcated area for unloading the materials. Post unloading the materials are sanitized using an appropriate solution. The most recommended solution is sodium hypochlorite, which is 1% by volume as concentration. It is sprayed along the material, and the material is allowed to cool for 48 to 72 hours. We strongly recommend that you should connect with your respective HSC members of your organization and drive this material management process in line with the organization health and safety processes. While coming to offices, we have smaller parcels as well as we have couriers or dockets which keeps coming in place. We recommend to have a similar approach in terms of receiving the parcels, sanitizing the parcel using an appropriate chemical, cooling time of 8 to 12 hours before you take the material inside the facility. Moving into the access point becomes a critical area where you will have a lot of employees touching these access points. I would invite Vishwa to share his thoughts about the social distancing and other aspects in the new normal way of access points.
Thank you once again, Harish. Coming to access points, these are like common areas where an employee would firstly enter into the office. First and foremost is the social distancing. As per the WHO standards, we would need, as seen in the visuals, you can actually see that there is a distance of minimum of 6 feet from one employee box to another employee box. Even when they are standing adjacent to each other, there is a gap of at least about 3 feet. This is just to ensure safety and security for all the employees. Second thing is, if you see in the second visual, in the elevator, inside the elevator, similar to what we have in terms of occupancy in the vehicle, if it's a 6-passenger lift, have only 2 to 3 employees at a time. I know the employees have to be a little bit patient to reach their floors, but this is very, very much required in terms of safety aspects. If it's an 8-passenger lift, 3 to 4 people. So on and so forth. Secondly, any officers, any multi-tenanted officers, any multi-floor officers, I would strongly recommend this is the right time to practice using the stairs at least up to the second or the third floor. So as much as possible, walk into the stairs, enter into the office. The second point is many offices have biometric and some of the offices have a swipe-in system. I would recommend deactivate all the biometric systems in your offices because that's a very strong point for if at all there is any incident to occur. So please deactivate the biometric. Keep the doors on your swiping machine, and plus whenever you're trying to enter into a lift, please use your elbows, which is the safest way to kind of open and close the lift. Follow the instructions of the security very strictly, and plus make sure that we budget additional security also for all these areas, especially the common areas like the aisle space, the entry, the exit gate, etc., etc. Over to you, Harish.
Thank you, Vishwa. Also, would like to add on a couple of things here. If possible, introduce hand sanitizing stations outside the elevator and the respective floors, which can help your employees sanitize post usage of the elevators during the breaks, during entering and exiting the facilities. All this can be practiced, which can be a best practice. Also, promote wellness as part of this program. This is the right time to promote wellness. Most organizations today are for wellness. So we should be encouraging employees to use the stairways as much as possible. Absolutely, we respect people who are differently abled. We respect people who has health issues. We should not be very strict in terms of it. Let us respect the employees and their feelings, and accordingly we should be helping them in terms of accordingly we should be working towards these access points. The next important space is the workspace and the shop floor. Before even we go into the workspace and shop floor, couple of aspects which I would wanted to bring in here as a recommendation is that PPEs should be a must for all the employees who are entering the workspaces or the factories. Employees in the sense including our support staff, our vendors, as well as our contracted employees. This is the first and foremost thing which we need to understand. The second aspect which we wanted to focus today is in terms of the kind of chemicals that would be utilized. The WHO recommended chemical is sodium hypochlorite, which is 1% by volume. And the second chemical that is recommended is hydrogen peroxide, which is 5% by volume. Why you have two chemicals? Sodium hypochlorite is a chemical which can be used in external surfaces, which is a little pungent chemical. Also, it is corrosive in nature for metal surfaces. So for external surface, you can use sodium hypochlorite. Your external pathways, driveways, all this you can use sodium hypochlorite. In terms of internal surfaces, it is highly recommended to use a hydrogen peroxide, which is 5% by volume. This is only a chemical composition. Any chemical which has a composition of sodium hypochlorite or hydrogen peroxide can be used for sanitizing this space. Officers, the guidelines for officers has been spoken and during our last session. Just to brush up on it, social distancing is a very key factor in terms of having the workspace inside our offices, the new normal workspace inside offices. All this while, we would have been disinfecting our offices once in a week, that is during the deep cleaning or so-called as a spring cleaning aspect. Going forward, we will have to change that. Every day, the desk has to be disinfected using the approved chemical. It's also recommended to install lot of hand sanitizing stations within the floor in spite of your wash area being available in the floor. When it moves to the shop floor, the guidelines would be, in order to, again, we emphasize on PPEs, which is mandatory and it's a must for people entering the facility. Social distancing is one aspect. We will have to see how we can have it in our factory, have a discussion with your business leaders, how that can be implemented. Most important aspect, which we have not been doing all this while in our factory, is that sanitizing the tools after every shift. Tools, we use it, our employees use it, leave it like that, and then they go back. It is advisable we have 2 sets of tools. It's a recommendation from the facility side to the business leaders that 2 sets of tools can be there. After every shift, 1 set of tool can be sanitized, allowed for a cooling period of 8 hours before the next shift of people start taking the tool for their utilization during the shift. The other recommendation which we would strongly make here is that create a lot of hand wash areas, create a lot of hand sanitizing station. Whatever is possible, it has to be created from the facility side for the employees to maintain their personal hygiene as well as the respiratory hygiene. Unknowingly, most of us touch our eyes, nose, or the mouth. In order to ensure that our hands are always sanitized, it's better that we start implementing these recommendations for betterment of our facility. Last but not least, also have markings, floor markings for the water coolers, which predominantly is found in all the shop floor. The floor marking should have social distancing aspect kept in mind. When we talk about office space or in factory space, air quality plays a prominent role in terms of it. There has been a lot of authorities which has released guidelines in terms of indoor air quality. Asia is one which releases an indoor air quality guidelines. As per them, in case of an office space, anywhere between 24 to 30 degrees with 40 to 60% of relative humidity is an acceptable practice. Also have more of fresh air and exchange of air cycles in your AHUs so that you have more of fresh air coming inside. While we accept the fact when you have more of air exchanges, there will be an increase in terms of our power consumption. We should also remember one thing: if there is going to be one case of a COVID positive in a workspace, the entire workspace and the employees would be under quarantine for 14 to 28 days based on the decision of the authorities. Moving forward into common spaces, I would like to invite Vishwa to share his thoughts.
Thank you, Harish. Thank you. So, in continuation of what Harish summarized, I would like to summarize some of the points when it comes to common area spaces. Common area spaces, as we all know, could be the entry-exit points, the reprography area, the pantry, the meeting rooms, conference or the board rooms, and the cafeteria. So, consolidating all these points and not getting into too much of details into each, I would like to say maintain the social distancing of 6 feet wherever possible. And to give some examples, when you go into a reprography area, making sure the doors are open, there is a security guard there who can help the employees and ensures that an employee stands at least 6 to 3 feet apart from one to another. Even while receiving the couriers, the person who is issuing the courier or the stationery or anything that could be, or a parcel, always is wearing a mask and the gloves and gives it to the employee to ensure that the transmission is not there. Second point, whenever there is refilling of papers, especially in the floors, there is one dedicated boy who goes across all the floors along with the stationery and he refills it. So again, coming back to the roster system, we have a dedicated roster for a particular shift for a particular period of days, and I would recommend 30 days for the ease of management. Definitely, you have a plan B in place where, in case of any other reason, not just COVID, even if any other reason the employee is on leave, have a second person in place, backup already. Coming to the meeting rooms, boardrooms, and the conference room, again, maintain the occupancy at 50%. Where you have a 4-seater meeting room, have a 2 people sitting there. Where you have a 12-seater conference room, making sure that it has only 6 people, and sanitize all the equipment, the telephone, the Wi-Fi equipment, the chairs, the table, etc., after every meeting. And when you come to the pantry is one place where generally employees crowd across for when they go for having their coffee, tea, or any other beverages. Making sure we have a poster there which clearly mentions, please take your beverage and get back to your seat as soon as possible. And ask the employees to please see if they can get their own slippers also to work. These are some of the points that I can summarize, and back to you, Harish, again for more points.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vishwa. Also, let us understand the fact that we should start promoting our employees using the workspace for consuming the beverages. Once they pick up the beverages, we should always recommend them to go back to their workspace so that the other employee gets an opportunity to pick up the beverages. Of course, social distancing has to be practiced. There are certain facilities which may not have a social distancing. That's a challenge which every location FM has to take a call appropriately in line with the facility which he operates out of. Moving into the restroom and sanitization space, this is a very, very kind of a tricky scenario where we find most of the restrooms, whether it can be in factories or whether it would be in workspaces, our restrooms have not been thought and designed keeping in mind this social distancing. This social distancing is a new normal way. Of course, there will be challenges in terms of certain organizations. All of us would start learning that in the due course and then start practicing it. Wherever it is possible, if you can see image number 2, that is where a social distancing is the best possible way inside a washroom. Entry and exit, yes, still would have a challenge. In order to ensure that if the places where we are not able to maintain the social distancing, in order to ensure the risk, that is the reason why we highly recommend people to use the PPEs even within the offices, as well as maintain the personal hygiene within offices. In the restroom aspect of it, one final point which I would like to make it here is that if we could have hand sanitizing stations outside the restrooms, that would be a better aspect or a recommendation from our side for the facility fraternity. Employees who use the restroom or the restroom door handles can come out, sanitize their hands, and then go to the respective workspaces. We move into the cafeteria and the kitchen spaces. How do we approach towards the cafe? The first and foremost thing what we would like to bring here or recommend here is that if at all we are going to take a bit more time in terms of reboarding a caterer, the wait is worth, we would only suggest we should have a proper discussion with the caterer or the representative of the caterer, have a thorough audit by the HSC team and the facility team or the committees before we commence our services. Let's agree, and this is a very, very crucial area or a potential threat from an external source to us. So, and kitchen audit is a must. Sanitation record of the kitchen is definitely a must for us in order to ensure that we are following the process. Also, we should ensure the transport vehicle where they use transportation of food is also sanitized in line with recommended chemicals. Medical records of the staff. Definitely, we all would have collected the medical records of the staff as per the requirement of the HSC in the beginning of the contract year. We would strongly suggest and recommend we should have a medical record collected again, because there would be authorities who would be coming in and checking, doing a random check of the facility. All these records would become handy. In terms of the caterer resources, we would be having, or we will be holding the same process for other resources, how we are handling it. There would be a new normal way in terms of our food container sanitization. All this while we get the food from the transport from the vehicle, we unload it in the unloading base, and then we shift it to the cafeteria through the service elevators or whichever means it is based on the location of the cafeteria. Going forward, we would advise you strongly to sanitize the exterior part of the vessels where food is being transported up to your cafeteria, and then get loaded into the trolley. It is the responsibility of the IFM team or the service provider to sanitize the trolley at any given point of time. Sanitization is a continuous aspect, not only for men, for material also it is very, very important aspect. The other important aspect in terms of the food counters, there are certain precautions and recommendations which we bring in here. Have a limited menu in your cafeteria. Involve your sourcing team. Have the renegotiations done with your service provider, and then have a limited food. Discourage online ordering. Please tell it's strictly discouraged, and then online ordering is not possible at all. Discourage employees going out of the facility for having lunch in a closer hotel. Very, very important aspect. Go in only for packed food for certain period of time. While I understand in certain factories it will be a challenge in terms of having a packed food, if you are going to have a buffet, our recommendation would be the caterer or the food handler should be the only person who should be serving the food, and not left to the employee to pick up his food. Any number of times the employee can visit the counter, but the service would be carried out only by the food handler. Over to you, Vishwa, for your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so can we just go to the next? Yes. So a couple of points I would like to add. As much as possible, avoid the cash transactions at the counters. Make sure you have digitalized payments to all the food court vendors, or even to your own vendor who's there in your specific food court. Secondly, in terms of seating, making sure that the employees do not reorganize the table and chairs and have a team lunch or a team kind of a meeting at the cafeteria or the food space or in the food court. If possible, the IFM could actually go ahead and mark all the chairs and tables as to where an employee can sit and which can be avoided, or probably remove the additional chairs, and making sure there is a staggered entry of different processes between 12:30 to 3:30 or so on and so forth as per the company's policies, so that there is not too much of crowding at the cafeteria, even at the pantry areas. And last but not the least, making sure, like what Harish rightly mentioned, that all the service providers, be it the caterer, be it a transport provider, or be it a security, they every day before they actually start their operations, there has to be a 15 minutes or a 20 minutes briefing done to all the boys, assigning their duties, assigning safety measures, and making sure they imbibe the safety precautions to be taken while they serve in the cafeteria, while they sanitize the floors, or while they are handling security. Over to you, Harish.
Thank you, Vishwa. Just to give you a summary of this, there has been certain chemicals which has been recommended by FSSAI in terms of sanitizing the food products. It can be a raw product or it can be a container. Chlorine is one of the recommended product by FSSAI in terms of sanitizing the perishable products. You can use this chlorine and then clean the product is for before consuming the food, or the food which can be consumed raw should be sanitized with the chlorine. Quaternary methyl butyric acid, which is again an acid, wherever you are going to have a connect. We were talking about sanitizing the exterior of the food container. Even interior of the food container can be sanitized. Our only recommendation is that please check with your respective HSE leads before implementing the recommended process in any of the facilities. Because every HSE lead of an organization has a different approach and a view towards certain chemicals. We strongly recommend you take the advice of the HSE lead before implementing this. While we move into the E&M services, most of the E&M services there has been a lot of recommendations by the OEMs. There has been a lot of recommendations by OEMs. So we strongly suggest go as per the recommendations of the OEMs. Our only recommendation would be ensure all your areas are neat and clean. The AHU room, LT panel room, UPS room, hydrant pump room, and the other utility rooms are absolutely neat and clean. The second aspect is that check the functionality of all your critical and non-critical equipments. Very, very important. We had been under lockdown for close to 6 weeks. Functionality check is very important. Also do a dry run or a dry testing of your fire alarm system as well as your surveillance system, which is very, very essential before we start operations. One more aspect which we would want to ensure is that you ensure that the stocks of all your essential consumables, stock of your PPE is sufficient for next at least 30 days should be available at the facility level. When we move into HVAC precautions, we have authorities who have released guidelines in terms of how do we operate the HVACs. Few guidelines from our side would be in terms of cleaning the air filters, providing adequate ventilation, which is the exhaust system or a fresh air pumping into our AHUs is what is the adequate ventilation, taking care of your condensing coils as well as your fins, combing of fins. I don't know how many of us would have done in the past, which is a very, very important aspect, which I would strongly recommend. If it is possible, please carry on with it. Please perform that aspect during this lockdown. Also, we recommend the set temperature between 24 to 30 degrees. The HVAC precautions would be in line with ISRAE standard. Before we conclude this session, I would like to bring in certain key focus points, which would be re-emphasizing on personal hygiene, respiratory hygiene, social distancing. This is what everybody in the location has to practice. From the facility point of view, it will be cleaning and sanitation to the extreme levels using appropriate chemicals, briefings, training, re-emphasizing of what has to be practiced. The new normal way has to be again and again re-emphasized, trained, and then it has to be inculcated into our teams. Usage of recommended PPEs and chemicals. We also suggest signages and posters will reduce at least 50% of the job of the facility managers. Have as much as signages, as much as posters possible across the locations. One important aspect is that we should never forget the mask or the PPE which we are using. Mostly the mask which we are using can be used only for a day. That is the recommended guidelines by the manufacturer. Whether it is going to be N95, FFP2 mask, this is the recommended guidelines. Please also consult your respective HSE teams. Disposal of mask is a very important aspect which each one of us should take care. It's also a social responsibility from our side. After usage, it becomes a biomedical waste. Please talk to your respective HSC team. Again, I would only recommend talk to your HSC team and go as per the recommendations of the HSC team, which would be the best practice. We will be facing a lot of challenges in the new normal way. While I accept there will be a lot of challenges, you will have a lot of authorities coming in, you will have challenges in terms of implementation. Please understand, in the fight against COVID for protecting the facility, it is not only the FMs who are there. You have your functional leaders from HSC side, from your HR side, as well as your business leaders. Have an engagement with them. Formulate a task force. It can be shop floor wise, it can be floor wise, or it can be also in a tech park. It can also be involve everybody, including the functional and the business teams, and ensure they support you in implementing this process of the new normal way. Last but not least, if you have to do and attract resources for this, you need to have some kind of a motivation for them. Try and introduce some R&R programs to them. With this, I would like to conclude this session and hand it over to Anil. Thank you, one and all.
Harish and Vishwa, it was a wonderful session full of information and practical approach towards getting decked up for the restart of the business operations. The gist of preparedness was well touched upon and indicate more meaningful actions to be undertaken. We as an FM need to be proactive and prepared and cannot afford to be on a reactive state, as our focus shall be on enabling business functioning back to normal. I would like to tell the entire audience to please register on the GACS app if not done yet. We are available on social media like Twitter, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'll urge members to share the information with their colleagues and friends to join GACS, the unique fraternity for bringing the knowledge for members in this dynamic and ever-changing world. Restarting the operations after the lockdown, this enforced COVID-19 lockdown has given FM across globe the opportunity to finally pause, re-energize, capitalize, reflect and change, and then restart. With this, I would like to open the forum for question and answer and request all to send their question in the chat box. I had realized that we already have few questions put up by the audience. I'll take one question at a time. Harish, this question is for you. Surinder Bist from Bangalore has asked 6x6 social distancing, how it can be applied to in the practical context in smaller offices. Are they doable?
Okay, thanks Surinder for that question. Social distancing is what which is being recommended to practice. There are a couple of ways where we can not possible to maintain a social distancing. There are a couple of ways which we have spoken about in terms of having PPEs and maintaining the personal hygiene and respiratory hygiene. Practically, yes, it is a challenge in smaller offices. However, the recommended option is social distancing. We can also look at option of having partial people work at home, or let's say that we have 50% of people working out of home and 50% of people working out of office. It can be alternative days or alternative weeks. The way to combat this COVID is social distancing, personal hygiene, and respiratory hygiene. If we are with our PPEs as well as practice this personal hygiene, of course, we would be able to manage if there is a challenge, real challenge in terms of social distancing as well in our offices.
Thank you, Harish. The next question is, Vishwa, for you. Dennis from Bangalore wants to know, are we not creating a panic?
Thank you, Anil. Mattomme ellarigu namaskara. the answer to this question is, this entire session that we have actually done, thanks to everybody, because it's a combination of all the questions and answers that we have got, which enabled us to kind of prepare this session for us. So from my heart, I thank everybody. And to answer the we are not trying to create a panic, but we are trying to set an expectation by over communicating to people, be it a service provider, be it our own employee, be it our management, making sure that they know what we are expecting from them and what is the support we can give it to them. We can give them. If this particular mandate is kind of achieved, I'm 100% confident that the panic situation will never be right. So, like for example, one question that came out during the session was, what if we find a positive COVID case? There was an answer in the session saying that we just need to follow as per the government authorities, as per the law of the land, and making sure that it is raised to the concerned authority to resolve it. Second question, I would say, what is it? How can we kind of avoid social distancing in smaller office, which was very correctly answered by Harish. In terms of wearing a mask, at least maintaining 2 to 3 feet of distance. So I think more than creating a panic, this is like more of a information sharing is what I would say. I wish this answers the question, Anil.
Yeah, thank you, Vishwa.
Anil, I would like to add on one small point here is that over cautious is better than not being cautious and being normal in the given situation. That's it.
Thank you, Harish, for the insight. The next question, Colonel Ashok Prabhakar would like to, he has shared that we should not lose the sight of the fact that disposable of these masks, gloves, etc. should be as per the medical waste standards. Yeah, according to OSHAS. Would you like to comment on this?
Yes, that's the reason why I mentioned that it has to be treated like a biomedical waste. When I concluded the session, safe disposal of mask has to be treated like a biomedical waste. So how do we dispose our biomedical waste in our operational health centers, in factories as well as in offices? The same process to be adopted, and I fully agree with what was proposed by Captain Ashok.
Thank you, Harish. We have now quite a lot of questions, but due to paucity of time, I would take another this question. Praveen is asking, is there any way to monitor in and out of the employees to and from work floor? We have disabled the biometric. Is there any other technology in place where it can be helpful? We are thinking of having OR code for marking in and out. Let me know your thoughts.
See,
Harish, would you take that?
Yes, absolutely. In terms of monitoring, if you don't have a biometric, normal readers are also available. You can replace the biometrics where you can have readers fixed, where you flash the card at 2-3 centimeters away from your readers. And all our cards, ID cards, are NFC cards, okay, which is near frequency cards. If you have a HD reader, obviously what happens is that you can flash it 2-3 centimeters away from it. Nobody touches the reader, as well as it is safe. I would suggest readers would be another alternative option which one can look at apart from the biometric.
And to add to that, Anil, in fact, I saw the answer in the session in a chat box. We can actually have a QR code similar to what Paytm and Zeta, etc., had. So that's one kind of a way to kind of, and plus additional cost would be the security who would be there to ensure that the employee scans that. So that's probably another option.
Yeah, we have quite a few questions more, but due to the time constraint, we will take it, after the session. And there's a lot of requests for sharing the PPT by the audience. So I would just like to say, share that we will be uploading it on the GACS website, and individually you can write to kchapter@gacs.world with your email addresses, and we will see how we can share it with you after the session. So one final question, Captain Rajesh has asked, have you spoken to your management, or are they in agreement with your recommendations?
See, when you go to your management and then you tell them, the first thing the management would say is that under a given situation, yes, they would agree upon it. Definitely there will be an aspect of cost which would come in, but at this point of time, no management will look at a cost rather than protecting the facility from the COVID. Yes, we have taken it up with our managements. It's also a responsibility of the facility managers to represent in an appropriate way to the management, so that the management understands the challenges. Of course, in this scenario, everybody understands the challenges, and there won't be any change in terms of their approach towards the spend. Also, just to give you a heads up, going forward, most of the organizations are going to have a separate pandemic kind of an capex as part of their budget, which is going to be the new norm in future across the organizations.
Thank you, Harish.
Anil, just one line to close this is probably, this session, the presentation is a combination of all queries, question and answers shared across the globe. In fact, this could become a white paper for helping all the facility managers. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Vishwa. With this, I would now like to request Captain Naren to say a few words before we end this session. Over to you, Captain Naren.
Hello. Good evening, friends. Harish and Vishwa, I think it was a very informative webinar, a very informative session. You guys have put together a whole lot of effort to get into the detailing. And I think recovery, in the post-COVID lockdown scenario is going to be the most critical aspect as we restart business, as we restart economy, and as we restart our lives. I think that's going to be the key of the whole thing, right? And I think it was extremely well done. Also, as part of the larger perspective and the larger picture, right? I think we all have to keep in mind that, we are looking at a larger, from a countrywide perspective and how things are going to change. So a lot of things are going to change. We are not going to get back to the post-March 24th or the March 20th scenario where we had an environment in which we were working and we were getting things done or getting our business done. So definitely all this is going to help you guys to think through it. This is designed to energize you guys to think, to make you start thinking and then building solutions based on what your business is and how your environment is. To the same effect, GSES has actually worked on a much a similar input and a similar concept, and has put together a whole recovery manual in terms of how things will roll out. At this point, I would request Captain Rajesh who heads GSES, to please take and help us and get us through this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naren, and thanks again to both the speakers along with Anil for an excellent session. And like they rightly said, I think we all are trying our best to make sure whatever best inputs we can provide to the fraternity, I think that's the intent. And in GSES, I've been saying we firmly believe in prepare and prevent rather than repair and repent. So keeping that in mind, we know after this, in the last few days, we have been hearing about new words which are very close to all of us: social distancing, new normal, and people are talking about no biometrics, use stairs, 6 feet offices. So a lot of things which we are hearing, and ultimately, I think from all across the globe, whatever inputs we have got, we have now captured that in this manual, which is called Post-Lockdown Preparedness Guide. So there are a lot of people whom we should be thanking for this particular document. This is, we feel, is a very, very deep document in terms of coverage. But I think apart from everyone else, Parvez is a guy who was working on this document for the last, I don't know how many days, 24/7. Obviously with the support from a lot of other people from the fraternity. And yes, you guys are right. Whatever we thought is the best we have captured here. Again, guys, two things very, very important. Number one, we have done our best to put in probably all possible areas to be covered under this document. However, please make sure that you pick and choose whatever suits to your organization. So we always say gone are the days when we had intellectual people or intelligent people, because these days any information you want, you can go to one uncle, that's Google Uncle, and get any input. But then you need to probably go at multiple times at multiple sites in Google also, versus what we have done is we have tried and captured everything here, so that this is more of a knowledge sharing document than anything else. So I think on that note, I'll quickly request Jatin to just move on to the next two slides, which are important, and then we'll close this call. Jatin, can you move on to the next slide, please? Okay, till the time Jatin does that, I would like to tell you guys, I think important is, basically we have tried covering right from planning, employee transport guidelines. We have also, and transport again is the start. Yes, Jatin, this is the one which I'm talking about. So this is, guys, what we have tried to capture. It's right from employee planning, then we are talking about transport, perimeter control, soft services, engineering services, security services, vendor management, material management, domestic and international travel, health and safety, 6 feet office protocol. Again, that's a terminology which we are using. And finally, most important is the technology, how we can make use of technology to make sure that we are able to deliver as per the expectations of our people as well as management. So I think this is a very broad sort of a frame which we have used. I'm sure there are going to be input, there are going to be feedbacks on this also. Again, guys, the request is, like we always say, GACS is the fraternity representation. This is your forum for you guys, and obviously from people like us from the fraternity. This is our volume 1. I'm sure very soon, on the basis of the input feedbacks received from all of you, we'll try and get that also updated, and probably we'll come up with volume 2. But as of now, I think this is the best way to summarize what we feel as the support function, the lead. I'll not restrict it only to the facilities or the real estate. I would say the support SMEs, this is what we should be following. And once again, thank you everyone for your time. And do please write back to us. Anil, at the last, I saw another message. If you can repeat the mail ID of Bangalore, people would want to know that again. But please, our request is make sure that you are there on our site. Go to site, go through this document, browse through it. Do share your feedback, and we'll be more than happy to include anything which is helpful to the fraternity. So thank you very much, guys. Over to you, Anil. If you can just repeat the mail ID.
Yeah, thank you, Captain. With this, we bring down the curtain for today's session. Just to remind you, today being the Earth Day, we all should remain committed and reiterate our support to the noble cause. No matter where you are, you can make a difference. And you are not alone, because we together can save the Earth. In fact, Corona lockdown has brought many positives to the Mother Nature. The impact on nature is amazing. With this, I would like to specially thanks the GACS Bangalore core team, Surinder Best, Jairam, Shashidhar, Dennis, and Captain Naren for all the motivation, coordination, and support. And not the least, the GACS Central Committee, who had made this interaction possible. We have a next session on 25th of April at 5 p.m. The topic would be COVID-19 impact on procurement and supply chain. Please join us to get the view from the industry experts. The email address for the GACS is where you can raise your queries and seek answers is kchapter@gacs.world. I repeat, kchapter@gacs.world.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Jai
Thank
Hind.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.